Content warning. The Matherson Marriage contains unhealthy relationship dynamics and fictional domestic abuse. If you are in a real-life Matherson marriage, please reach out to the appropriate authorities for help. Resources you may find helpful include the Pixel Project's Domestic Violence Resource page and UN Women's International Helplines list. Resources will be linked in the video description for accessibility. Hi, I'm Morgan, and today I will be reading to you from The Matherson Marriage by Ruby M. Ayres. Chapter 5. The Mathersons drove back alone. "It's not likely Ramsden would want to come after your display of temper," Matherson told his wife. He was driving very fast, partly as a vent to his irritability, and partly because he knew she disliked it. The car was racing along the narrow lanes, and Pansy sat silent and nervously flushed. I don't know what's happened to you," he went on after a moment. "I asked you to be decent to Ramsden, and all you do is to disgust him. How do you think I can make him come to business terms with me? He's put me off again, and it's all your fault." Pansy half turned in her seat. "Basil, what business have you got with Mr. Ramsden?" Matherson frowned. "Oh, so you're interested, are you?" he said. "Well, I'm not inclined to tell you after the way you've behaved. There's no gratitude in this world. After all I've done for you, I should have thought you would have made me your first consideration. But no, it's Buster and everyone before me." Pansy broke in distressfully. "I'm sorry, but it's your fault as well as mine. I can't understand you. You've changed so lately." "Or is it you who have changed?" Matherson interrupted. Pansy flushed and looked away from him. "If I have, I think you are to blame," she said. "We never used to quarrel." Her voice broke, and she controlled it with an effort. "I shall be only too happy to start again," she faltered, and all the time she knew that it was not she who made the offer of her own will or desire, but that new conscious fear in her heart. Matherson laughed complacently. "It all depends how things go on," he said. "It's like you to be disagreeable for days together, and then expect me to forget it in 5 minutes." He turned the car up to the door with a swing that almost flung Pansy from her seat, but she went into the house without a word. Her heart was bursting with his injustice. Her pretty face looked hard as she went upstairs. She met Joyce on the landing. "Have you brought the puppy?" she asked eagerly. "Buster has been talking about it all the morning." "No, Basil wouldn't let me have him." Pansy passed her and went on to her own room. She shut the door and flung her hat down on the bed. She ran her fingers through her bright hair with a distraught little gesture. "Someday you'll be sorry." The words haunted her with terrifying insistence. Why had she been so miserable since Lynn came to the house? Useless now to try to deceive herself, although the admission scorched her with shame. She tried to argue the truth away. She was a married woman, with a good husband and a darling little son. How dared she allow her thoughts to wander towards disloyalty? "I'll go away. I'll take Buster and go away for a long holiday," she told herself. "I'm tired and depressed. I'll go away, and when I come back, everything will be all right." Someone came tapping at the door. "Lunch is ready," Joyce's voice said outside. "Didn't you hear the gong? Mr. Matherson is angry at being kept waiting." Pansy went down at once. "Whatever happens, and whatever he says, I won't lose my temper with him," she thought. She apologized for being late. She took no notice when he only made a disagreeable reply. She did her best to put him into a more amiable frame of mind, but it was uphill work, and at last, in desperation, she said, "I've been thinking that I should like to go home for a few days, Basil. I'd take Buster. I haven't seen Father for ever so long." Matherson looked up. "You saw him about 6 weeks ago. I should not have thought you were particularly anxious to visit Lidstow again." "It's not Lidstow I want to see, I admit," Pansy answered lightly. "But if you don't mind, I should like to go for a few days. Buster, how would you like to go and see Auntie Violet?" Said Buster, his mouth full. Matherson turned on him sharply. "Answer your mother promptly," he commanded. Pansy flushed and bit her lip. "I'll leave you to look after things for me here, Joyce," she said, trying to speak cheerily. "We might go the day after tomorrow, don't you think? I'll write to Father." "That's right. Never consider or consult me," Matherson said bitterly. Pansy tried to laugh. I thought you'd be glad to be rid of us for a little while," she said painfully. Matherson pushed back his chair. "I hope you'll come back in a better temper," was the only answer he vouchsafed, but he raised no further objection to his wife's relief, and she wrote to her father as soon as lunch was over. "Can you put up with us for a few days, Father, dear? I think I'm a little bit homesick, and should love to come with Buster and see you both again. Tell Violet not to make any fuss, and I'll help with the extra work we shall make. I shan't bring Joyce. She'll stay here and see to things for me." She felt happier when the letter had gone. It would be a relief to get away from Basil for a little while, a relief to put distance between herself and the man who had brought this new disturbing emotion into her life. "Things will be all right when I come back," she told herself a dozen times, and besides, I didn't see very much of him. She tried to put Ramsden out of her thoughts, but it was difficult as Matherson spoke of him again and again. "He'll make a decent sort of neighbor for us," he said complacently. "There are so few people around here I care about. I like Ramsden. He's a man of the world." Pansy had some doubt as to whether Ramsden liked her husband. What possible business could the two men have together, she wondered. Basil had never had any occupation at all since she had known him, though she knew that he occasionally dabbled in stocks and shares for his own amusement. She tried to speak to him about it again the following day, but it was useless. "Women should not interfere with business concerns," was all the answer Matherson vouchsafed. "There are places to look after their home and children." Pansy laughed. "You always tell me I can't do that," she protested. "There's no need to get up an argument," Matherson said, and the subject dropped. There was a letter from Pansy's sister the following day. "Of course we shall love to have you," she wrote. Father asked me to write for him, as he is not very well. Come on Friday, and I'll be at the station with the trap to meet you by the usual train. Give my love to Buster, and tell him there are some tiny ducks for him to see." Pansy gave a sigh of relief. She flew off to the nursery to Buster. "Pack your things. Joyce, we're going tomorrow. And Violet says there are some little ducks, Buster. You'll love them, won't you?" She caught him up and kissed him rapturously. "I hope you don't mind being left for a few days," she apologized to Joyce, "but somebody must stay, or I know what Basil will say." "I don't mind in the least," Joyce answered resignedly. "How long will you be away?" "I don't know. About a week, I suppose." Pansy put Buster down and went over to the window. When she came back, Ramsden would be settled at Chiswell's, and apparently Basil intended seeing a great deal of him. Her heart failed at the thought. "It's no use my going away, not a bit," she told herself hopelessly, then pulled herself up in a panic. "What rubbish! As if I really care. Besides, he won't think anything of me now." Joyce was watching her with a curious expression. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. Pansy laughed and turned away. "Oh, I don't know. Nothing worth repeating, anyway." She went away and began to pack. "What do you want to take all that luggage for?" Matherson demanded, coming into the room behind her. "Surely it doesn't matter what you wear in a hole like Lidstow, does it?" Pansy sat back on her heels and looked up at him. "I'm not taking much," she objected, "and I wish you wouldn't call Lidstow a hole. It was my home, after all." But he was more agreeable for the rest of the day, and the following morning he drove Pansy and Buster to the station himself. He gave Buster half-a-crown and kissed Pansy affectionately before the train started. "Take care of yourself," he said, "and don't stay away too long." Pansy returned his kiss warmly. "I hope you don't mind us going." "My good heavens, no! I think a change will do you both good." Pansy looked out of the carriage window till a bend in the line hid the little station and Matherson from view. Then she sat down beside Buster with a sigh. "I suppose he must be fond of us, really," she thought, with a touch of remorse. Poor Basil! But it was a relief to get away from him, and when the train drew into Lidstow, she felt 10 years younger. For a few days she would have nothing to worry about, nobody to criticize her if she ran wild. She felt more like Buster's sister than his mother as, hand in hand, they ran down the platform to meet Violet. She was very like Pansy, only smaller and more mature. "Oh, Pansy, what a ripping hat!" was her greeting then. "Oh, Buster, you lovely darling!" "Have you got the ducks?" Buster demanded, wriggling from her embrace. "Not in my pocket," Violet answered, laughing. She linked her arm through Pansy's. "It's lovely to see you again. You know, I'm really a bit worried about Father. He's not at all well." "He wants a holiday, I expect," Pansy said. "We'll fix it up for him." They packed into the little tub trap and left the luggage to follow. Pansy looked round her with reminiscent eyes as they drove slowly down the country lane. She gave a little appreciative sniff. The air always seems sweeter here than it does at home, she said. I don't suppose it is, but it always seems so to me. She looked at her sister and added, Isn't it queer that one never realizes how good things are till they've gone? What do you mean? Violet asked. She always envied Pansy. She considered that she had everything the most exacting heart could desire. Pansy explained, I mean, that I used to hate Lidstow and long to get away from it, but now sometimes I'm positively homesick. Violet shrugged her shoulders. Are you? I shouldn't care if I never saw it again. It's the dullest spot on earth. It never grows. Nobody has built a house here for years and years. Nobody would ever want to, I suppose. What are you looking at? Nothing. Only the wood. Do you remember when we used to picnic there? On thick bread and jam and cold tea out of a bottle, Violet said with a grimace. You don't mean to tell me you'd like to go back to those days. Sometimes I think I shouldn't mind, Pansy said dreamily, and then, with sudden impulse, Violet, who do you think has come to live near us? Couldn't say. Somebody interesting? Mr. Ramsden. Violet echoed the name vaguely. Mr. Ramsden. Who on earth? Then her face broke into swift understanding. Oh, you mean Lynn! Good heavens, how formal you are! Do you call him Mr. Ramsden now? She laughed. It seems only the other day that he was mooning about round the village after you. He's not a bit like that now, Pansy said quickly. He's a man of the world, and Basil says he's ever so rich. I'm glad to hear it, Violet said warmly. He was a dear. I always liked him, though you were so unkind. There was a little silence. Is he married? She asked. Pansy looked away. No, he's just bought Chiswell's, the next estate to ours. How ripping! Violet's eyes brightened. Perhaps there's a chance for me, she added mischievously. It would just suit me to be mistress of a place like that. Ask me over to stay, Pansy. Of course, anytime you like, Violet sighed. I'd love it, but I couldn't leave Father. Ask Lynn to come over and see me, will you? Pansy did not answer, but a little pang touched her heart. Violet was so much like what she herself had been years ago when Lynn loved her. Her face was sad as the trap stopped at the vicarage gate. It was here that Lynn had kissed her goodbye more than 6 years ago. If only she had known then that. She pulled up her thoughts sharply, but as she followed her sister and Buster into the house, she felt with dismay that she had made another mistake by coming home. If she had wished to forget, why had she been so foolish as to come to a spot so filled with memories? And that is the end of Chapter 5 of The Matherson Marriage by Ruby M. Ayres. Hopefully Pansy has a better time at her home now that she's no longer by her really not nice husband. And I hope that you return soon to hear the next chapter. Have a great day. Bye!